Hello friends, I'm Mazafta from Easy Approach, and in this video we are going to implement infinite list with pagination. So the special thing about this video is we are going to do very less amount of code and we are going to avoid a lot of boilerplate code. We are not going to customize things, or we are not going to reinvent the things, or we are not going to do things from the scratch, but we are going to use a package which is a smart refresher for implementing the pagination. Using this package, you can not just implement the pagination. You can see when you will reach the very bottom of the page, it will automatically hit the API with the next page and will request the next page, and it will append the items of the next page into the existing list. But also what you can do with this smart refresher is you also can add the feature to pull to refresh, like when you have data which can be changed anytime and you want user to explicitly refresh the data, the latest snapshot of the data, then you can obviously add this pull to refresh thing also. So this is what we are going to implement in this video tutorial. So before starting this video, if you are new to my channel and if you want to learn Flutter with the really easy approach, then you can subscribe my channel, because I have almost over 100 videos on Flutter, and most of them are covering the state management, which is sometimes really confusing for the beginners. And I also have videos on Flutter and Firebase and some latest videos after the null safety upgrade in Flutter. So if you want to watch those videos, then you can click on the card that's appearing at the top right of the screen. So first of all, let's talk about the prerequisites that we are going to use in this tutorial. Obviously, if we want to implement the pagination and the infinite list, then obviously we need to have a list of data that we want to show in the list. So for showing the list of the data, or for getting the list of the data, what I'm doing actually, we have a couple of options. We can either store some fake data in the JSON locally in the application, but since I want to make it as real as possible, so that is why what I'm doing, I'm using a fake REST API for this purpose. And this is actually provided by instantwebtools.net. So they actually provide bunch of different endpoints, and the one in which we are interested is this list of passengers, which is the last one, and it is basically a GET request, and it also supports the pagination. By supporting the pagination, it means that it will give or provide us the metadata of the pagination, and we can use it for showing the current page of the data. So this is actually the response. If I just pasted this thing in the web URL, since it doesn't require any header or API key, the authorization basically, so you can directly access this. So I've just pasted this URL, and you can see this is the result. Obviously, this is a bit messy. So what I did, I use this JSON formatter to format this, or to beautify this code, so that we can analyze it properly. So basically, we have this whole JSON response. So the first thing is the whole object. The first property that it contains is the total passengers, which is the total number of records. And then we have the total pages. So this is basically something that we need to consider also, because when we will be at the last page, then we have to restrict user to fetch a new page, since all the pages are already being fetched. So that's the first thing. And then inside the data, we have the list of passengers. So you can see in each of the passengers data, we have ID, name, trips, and then the airlines that the passenger is using. So what we will do, simply we will just make a simple list view, and then we will show some essential information of the passenger on the list view, and we will also implement the pagination stuff. Now for the API calling, we can use a couple of things. We can either use div, or we can use HTTP. Since we just have to make a single request, it's easy in that particular case to use HTTP package, since we just need to use a single feature. We don't have to set up the whole client or something. So what I'm gonna do initially, I'm just gonna copy this, and I'm just gonna paste this inside the pubspec.yaml file, so that I can use it for making the API calls. So you can just simply paste after cappuccino icons, and then you can click on pub get. This would install the package, and then you can use it in future. Now the second thing that you have to do is you have to create models for the JSON that you will be getting from the fake REST API. So you have to write the logic for converting the JSON into real Dart object. So what I do normally when I'm working on practical applications, I normally use JSON serializable because that's more practical and that's more organized. But since we are more focusing on this tutorial on the pagination and we are not really focusing on the JSON parsing specifically, so we can go with some JSON converter generator basically. So this is the app.quicktype.io, and I found it really quick. You can just simply paste your JSON response and it will convert, or it will generate the logic for converting or for parsing the JSON into the real Dart object. So what you can do, you can simply paste this, and you can create inside the lib, you can create a folder which you can call it model, since we are going to store the structure of the passengers and also the structure of the response and the JSON parsing techniques. So I'm just going to create a model folder, and inside it I'm going to have a passenger data. You can name it anything you want, and then I'm just going to simply paste the whole result into this file. And since it's not really updated, this quicktime.io, and since in the latest Flutter version you have to add the required keyword in the optional parameters, so you have to add the required thing. So I can just copy it, and there are also some places where you have to paste it. That's good. And then we have some loss things. And also I'm going to do a little change in this model, since you can see that the list of data is actually the list of passenger and the type of this is datum. However, I want to make it more clear. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to find it, and I'm just going to replace it with passenger. So it will make more sense now, since it's the list of passengers. Now we have the data. We have the data model in the project, so we can now make the API calling a future. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go inside the main, and I'm gonna just minimize this, since we will be only working on this main.dart file. And the initial my home page, I'm gonna just remove this, which is the counter thing, and I'm just gonna create another stateful widget which I'll be calling home page, and you can name it anything you want. Basically, let me create this again. That's great. And I can simply over here just give the reference of this home page. Also, I want to have a simple layout. I'm going to use the scaffold as a root widget, which we normally do. And inside it, I'm just going to have an app bar. And in the app bar, you can simply give any title you want. And I'm just going to say it infinite list pagination. That's great. So let me rerun this application. Also, let's get rid of this comment and also the banner stuff. So it's outside of the theme data. You can just make it false, and it will just disappear the banner from the top. Now what we have to do, we have to write the future and actually the logic for fetching the current page of the data from the fake API server. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a future that will return bool, either true or false. So if the case will be like we got the data successfully, then we will return true. Else if we haven't gotten the data, then we will obviously return false. So what I'm going to give it a name, we can say it anything. So I'm saying it get passenger data. And since it's a future, it's better to use async. We will be using the await keyword inside it. And because the thing is, the list is paginated actually, so we have to use integer, a variable for the current page, for holding the current page, and obviously the current page will be initialized from 1. Now we have to set up the HTTP, and by setuping we mean simply, first of all, let's import the HTTP file, http.dart, and we can give some alias since it contains some feature that we are interested in. So we are going to make the GET request, so we can simply say http.get, and over here you have to specify the URI object. So before it, let's create a URI object, which is basically the link or the API path for the whole request. And then you can say URI.parse, and over here inside it you have to specify the endpoint that you are interested in. So we can just go here and then we can just copy and paste. That's great. So it basically has a couple of queries, parameters. The first one is the page that you are currently going to fetch. And the second thing is the size of the page. So we are not going to change the size of the page. However, you can update it from 10 to 20, or you can make it dynamic. You can take some variable also. But what I'm going to do, I'm more interested in this page. So I am just going to put the current page over here. So that's great. And then I can simply just give the reference of this URI inside the GET request. And since this http.get is the future, so we can store it into a response object, and we have to use await also since it's a future. And once we get the response, then simply we can just check the status of the response. If the status code is 200, obviously it means we have made a successful call. Then in this case, we have to write the logic for fetching or for parsing the JSON into a real dart object, into a list of passenger of the passengers, or you can say into the passenger data that we have created the model. And in case we haven't got the data, or we have failed making the successful HTTP request, in that case we will simply just say false. And ultimately, in case of successful call, we can just return true. Now, first of all, once we get the successful response, then obviously we need to have the list of passengers so that we can show it in the list view. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a list of passengers, and initially it will be null. Sorry, not null, actually it will be empty list. And what I'm going to do inside it, simply, first of all, I will parse the response into the passenger data. And how I can do it, it actually provides, this generated code actually provides some functions. You can use this function passenger data from JSON. So it actually takes the string and then it converts it into the passenger's data. So simply, you can say final result equals to passenger data from JSON, and you can simply pass here the response.body. So it will give you back the result as passenger data, and then you can simply fetch. First of all, what you can do, simply you can say passengers equals to result dot, and inside it we have the data, which is the list of passengers. And once you updated this, you can just call set state, since we are not actually using some other state management despite apart from the stateful widget. So in order to update the UI, whenever the data will be changed, we have to update this passenger. We have to call this set state. And also, since we have successfully patched the first page, after getting the passengers list or successful response, we can simply increment the current page. And the next time when we will call this future, it will obviously fetch the next page from the data from the server. So that's the thing you have to do. And then, if I'm missing something, I don't think so. And we can work on the list view appearance. So simply what I'm going to do, I'm going to use list view dot separate it so that we can have a a nice divider between all of the items. And then I'm just going to define the view for each of the item in the list. So you can customize it however you want, but I'm just going to give it a simple look so that we can really see it working. So what I'm going to do inside it, I'm just going to use list style. And first of all, we have to provide here the item count, and it will be totally based on the list of the passengers we have at the top. So we can just say here list passengers.length, and in the separator builder we can just use context and index, and we can just simply return the divider without doing anything fancy. And to get the current passenger data, you can simply say passenger equals to, and you can fetch the current passenger data by using this square bracket, and you can just specify the index. It will just give you or return you the currently rendered passenger on the list item. So then you can use it inside the list. So we can just simply have a title first, and you have to specify here the text widget, and you can simply just use the name of the passenger for using. And then we have the subtitle property that comes after the title. So inside this we can just use anything you want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the airline and the country of the airline, and you can customize this list style as much as you want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to also use trailing, and inside the trailing I'm just going to use a text widget, and we can print some further information like the airline name as trailing. So that seems good. And what I'm also gonna do, I'm also gonna print the body in the response in the successful response block, so that we can see that we are really getting the data. So it will just print the data on the console so that we can see what's going on and what data we are actually receiving. So far we just have the list view dot separated appearance on the screen, and we also have the functions or the future basically to fetch the current page of the passenger data. And we also have the list that we are already utilizing inside the list view. Now we haven't called this future yet, so what I'm going to do initially, because we will actually change it, since we have to implement the pagination also, and we are going to use some package that will make pagination really simple and really cool to really implement. So, but now just for testing, I'm just going to call this get passenger data inside the init state. So it will call this, and it will actually fetch the first page, and once we have the page, we will call the set state, and it will then update the UI. And initially the passenger dot length will be 0 because we have initialized the list with an empty list. So obviously initially it will just show nothing, but once we get the data successfully, then it will update the UI. So let's run the application, and let's also open the console so that we can see what's going on. Okay, so we get this exception, and in order to fix this exception, we have to write some code that I've just copied from the Stack Overflow. So basically, this exception comes because of some error in the certificate that at the SSL certificate from the server. So in order to quickly fix it, because this is the API, we're not going to use it in the production. We're just going to use it in development. So while for development, for testing, we can quickly fix it. You can just simply copy this error, and then you can paste it in on the Stack Overflow, or perhaps you can just paste it on Google. And you can just click on this Stack Overflow link. Well, I'm also teaching you the way of finding the solutions. So this is the solution. We have to add this thing. So just copy this whole code, and you just have to paste it in your main.dart file. You can paste it anywhere you want. Since it's a class, it should be outside of any other class. And you have to update, you have to import few of the things. And this is actually now, since it's Flutter 2.0, you have to add here since it can be null, so you have to add here question mark, and you have to add another line, which is you have to paste this line inside main dot dot inside the main function actually. So you can simply, before running the app, you can just simply have this. And if you refresh this, if you restart the application, it should not give the same error again, but it should rather show the list of all the passengers. So you can see now we have the list of all the passengers, but you can see this is just a single page. This is just the page number 1. And since we want the list is already paginated, so we want to have the pagination function in this list view in our app. And we want whenever user will exceed the scroll limit, or he just goes up to the bottom, then in that case it will automatically hit the API with the next page, and it will just add the latest page into the existing page, into the existing list. So let's see how we are going to do this. Since I don't want to make things from the really scratch, because we are not going to reinvent the wheel, since we have a great and elegant package for this purpose, for implementing the pagination, and I've been using it for like 2 years, and it's working really great, and it's been saving a lot of time of mine while development and while implementing the pagination. So the package that we are going to use is pull to refresh. So we can just simply search for pull to refresh in Flutter, and you can just find it on pub.dev, and then you can just copy this line, and you just have to paste in your pubspec.yaml file. So you can just paste it after the HTTP, and then you can just click on pubget. This would install the package, and then you can obviously use this package in your Flutter application. So what I'm gonna do, it is really simple to implement the pagination using this package. The very first thing is you have to wrap your list into a widget that is called Smart Refresher. So that's the first step. And then you can see after you wrapped it, you will get some exceptions, since it has a required parameter, which is a controller of it, and you have to specify it. So you have to add the controller with this Smart Refresher. So what I'm going to do at the very top, I'm just going to create a new refresh controller. It is called refresh controller. And then you can initialize this refresh controller. And it has some things in this. If you want to make this, make it refreshed automatically at the very first, or you can say if you want it to automatically load at the first time while the page is loaded, then obviously you can make it true. And we have to make it true if you want to automatically call the API. Otherwise, we have to pull down, and then it will refresh, or it will fetch the first page. Now we can associate this controller with this smart refresher. So you can just say refresh controller. Now with this refresh controller, you can do a couple of things. The first thing is you can implement swipe to refresh, and you can also implement the pagination thing, which will be like when you will reach the very bottom of the list, then it will actually, you can pull up, and then it will refetch, or you can say it will fetch the next page. So you can do both of the things, the swipe to refresh, the pull to refresh actually, and also the pull up to reload or to load the next page. And for this purpose, for this specific case, however, we don't want to have the swipe to refresh because or pull to refresh, since this data is not changeable. It's just a dummy and fixed data. But in the case like when you are working for a chat application, you have a list of data that can be changed anytime, and the new data can be inserted in the existing data. Then obviously swipe to refresh or pull to refresh will be something to really implement and focused. And yeah, obviously we are going to implement the pagination, but since we are going to explore this package, so I'm gonna implement both of the things. So first of all, I'm just going to implement the pull to refresh thing. So for this, you have a function that you have to specify, which is on refresh. So over here, you have to specify the void function. And since we are going to call the API or future inside it, so I'm going to make it on, I'm going to use the async keyword with this. Now what I'm going to do, because this on refresh will only fetch the first page. It will not, however the value of counter will be, the count page will be. But in the case of on refresh, it will only fetch the first page. So what we are going to do, in this get passenger data, I'm going to have a check, which is the Boolean variable. and I'm just gonna confirm from the caller method that if it is for the refresh purpose. So initially, I'm saying it is not actually for the refresh purpose, but it will be working as default nature, like for the pagination thing. But when we will have this is refresh true, then it will just only whatever the value of current page will be, but it will just fetch the first page, since the pull to refresh mean to just refresh the first page. So what we can do, we first have to check if is refresh is true. So in the case if it is true, then we can, however or whatever the value of current page will be, we can just simply say 1, just update the value to 1, and it will just automatically, because we are using this current page in the API, it will just fetch the first page. However, if the value of is refresh is false, then it will just ignore this, and it will just go with the because we would have like incremented the counter value, the current page value before last API call, in the last API call. So it will be automatically fetching the next page by default if this will be is refresh will be false. So in the case of on refresh, we can just simply say final result equals to get passenger data. And over here, we have to say is refresh true, since we just want to fetch the first page. And if the result is true, then in this case, we can call the refresh controller, and you can just simply call refresh completed. And in case when also, since this thing will require await because it's a future. So let's use future here before the let's use await here before the future name. And then in case when we haven't gotten the data in any case, then in that case we have to say refresh field. This you have to make this things, because it will affect the UI. It will show in case when the data will not be fetched successfully, this smart refresher will automatically show that the data is not loaded or something. So it will just indicate few things, so we have to keep it. And this is just for the to pull to refresh thing. And we also want to have the pagination. So for the pagination, we have to say on loading, and we have to specify here the on loading. And since we are going to do something similar that we have done in the on refresh, we just we will just skip this is refresh. So we have to use here async. But before defining the on refresh, before defining the on loading, so we have to enable the pull up thing, because by default it's false. So by default it doesn't support the pagination, but if you want to add the pagination, you have to make it false. You have to make it true, sorry. And once you make it true, and then you can simply define the onloading. So we can just simply paste the code that we have in on refresh, and with slight difference we can make it work. Simply you can just avoid this, and since the default value is false, you can just remove this all. And in case of the loading, instead of calling refresh completed, you have to call load complete. And in case of failing, you can just say load fail. So that's it. And there's another thing. In case of when we will be working with the pagination, we also have to keep track of the total pages. We will not fetch the page if it will exceed the total number of pages. So what I'm going to do, I'm also going to have the total page thing. So I can just say late end, since I'll not be sure initially. We have to make first the API call in order to get this. And we will have the total pages. Okay. So once we will make the first API call inside the we'll make the first API call, and we can simply say the total pages equals to result, because we have total pages inside the result, and then we can just assign it to the total pages. So that's simple we have to do. And in order to make sure that we uh, don't exceed the limit, or we don't actually fetch the page that's exceeding the total pages. And this will only happen in case of when we have is refresh false, because in case of pull to refresh, it will just fetch the first page, obviously, but in case of pagination, it will work. So in case of when we don't when we are not calling this for is refreshing for refreshing, we have to make sure that if the current page is greater than or equals to the total pages, then in this case, what it has to do, it has to call the refresh controller and load no data. It means there's no more data to fetch. And then you can just simply return true. So that's what you have to do. Basically, over here, you have to say, you can either return true or false, but it will make things a little bit weird, since it will also if we like return true, it will not just indicate that there's no data, but it will also say the data is successfully loaded. So for now, you can make it false, but it can be managed more elegantly. But since we are just covering the basics, so we can really refactor things. So that's it. And now we have basically modified the get passenger data feature, and this is the latest result. And we also have to remove this from the enter state, since we don't require it anymore, because we have the initial refresh true. So it will automatically call the first page. And yeah, it seems good. It seems great. Let's run the application. You can see the by default, actually, it's trying to fetch a new page. And if my internet connection is not broken, yeah, you can see the page is loaded. And if I go at the bottom, actually, it should fetch the new page. Okay, so it's fetching the new page, but you can see we still have the 10 records. Although we need to have after fetching the new page, we should have actually 20 records. It's basically in case of pagination loading, which will not be the case when we will be refreshing the page. We have to not just update the passengers, because over here we are just updating the existing page of the passengers to the newly fetched page of the passenger. However, this should only be done in case of refresh. But if this is not refresh, we have to not just assign or reassign it, but we have to append the new list into the existing list of passengers. So rather than saying equals to result.data, we will just add result.data. That's great. Now let's refresh it. You can see this is the first page, and if I go at the bottom, so you can see now the old record, the old page is already there, and you can see the new records coming at the bottom. And if I go again at the bottom, then it will again fetch the API. So you can see it's how simple it is to implement the infinite list and to implement the pagination stuff using this package. And you can also have if I go at the top and just do the pull down thing, and you can see that it is already refreshed. And since we have the same data, it's not refreshed from the backend. So obviously we cannot see any changes, but if the data is changeable, it will work like a charm. So this is it from this video. If you like the video, please give a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed the channel, please subscribe the channel and share the videos with those who want to learn Flutter with easy approach. So thank you for watching.